First and foremost, I want to give all praises to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachahakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations, as always, to the elect. News and prophecy, linking the things we see happening worldwide to the Holy Scriptures, so that the faithful elect, the remnant of Yahweh Bashmi Shai, can know and understand the times that they are in, right? As the Scriptures told us that we would have to tap into another level of faith via the book of Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, right? It basically describes an environment, all right, where the rulers of the earth will be ruling in a manner that was not upright, contrary to our very existence, opposing our power in a way that no other tyrant or ruler has ever done, right? And how we would have to live by faith. The just shall live by faith. And ultimately, the Heavenly Father, through his only begotten Son, has blessed us and endowed us with the Holy Spirit from on high, all right, reaching the mind of the servants, the prophets, who've been comforted with the vision. And as we have received the vision, we comfort you, sincere brothers and sisters, who ultimately want the kingdom to be set up on the planet Earth, all right, and who have come to the conclusion that there is nothing else left for us in this world, as it is tainted, wicked, and being ran by means that are tied to the spiritual demon Satan, which is why things are out of order, things are unjust, all right. The wealth gap is just completely out of control. Everyone's in debt, everyone's languishing, and that all, centers itself around the fact that the law, statutes, and commandments and the way that the Heavenly Father intended on this earth be ran are being disrupted, ignored, mocked at, and now they're trying to take things a step further as solidifying themselves as gods on earth, all right, and having power that only the Most High has, knowing your every step, your every thought before you do it, right? And ultimately, the plan is to excommunicate righteousness from the planet Earth, all right, and forward their own version of a birthright, because we know what is promised into the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Hamashiach Yahweh Shai is going to establish the throne of David on earth as it is in heaven. We're going to rule on the earth as gods, okay, with new bodies that are not subject to sin, establishing righteousness throughout the four corners of the earth, the chariots. We'll have systems of surveillance and righteousness as well. All right, but they're trying to establish themselves by left hand means. All right, and when we talk about left hand, we're speaking of through wicked means, because the Most High has a right hand, which we know Yahweh Shai sits at his right hand, and he's not just sitting there, right? But he also has a left hand, and that's through the spiritual demon Satan, because the will of evil has to be played out on the planet Earth. You see? And there's a nation of people tied to forwarding the agenda of Satan on the planet Earth. As a matter of fact, as we see here, President Trump has signed 2 executive orders on quantum computing. And again, a lot of the things that they are doing are going over people's heads while they are bombarding your mind with, all manner of confusion with this war in Iran and, just instability in the economy. Now they're talking about a water shortage. They're using fear tactics, and they're hoarding all of the land and the resources into themselves. All right. Meanwhile, they're bringing about a squeeze to where, when it's all said and done, we know they're going to come with, more false flags. We know they're, going to come with more situations that are going to, bring, humanity to its knees, especially here in America. All right. Because America has enjoyed of the countries the most freedoms, liberties. But as the scriptures say, get you unto the country, the wealthy nation that dwelleth without care, which have neither gates nor bars. So something big is coming. All right. Things have happened, have been happening, over the past years. But we know with Trump, his presidency represented the coming of a technocracy as he's presented the technocrats to you. And under the guise of making America great again, he's forwarding the agenda of the elites. Okay, we showed you that this whole 6G, winning the 6G race where Trump, mocked about, 6G, being able to see under one's skin, right? And even in this particular White House, posting, we see the talking point of implantable technologies. All right. This technology, meaning 6G, will play a vital role in the development and adoption of emerging technologies like AI, robotics, and implantable technologies. Okay. 6G will also provide faster, more resilient, and more secure communication networks that can be utilized for national security and public safety purposes. And they will always bring out the notion of peace and safety. All right, let's listen to this real quick. All right, because that's going to be at the forefront of them establishing this technology is the fact that we need safety. We need, peace. We need, a system to where everyone can feel secure, as they have brought about many insecurities and instabilities in the system of this, what they are now calling old world, right, as they enter into the new.
We're also honored to be joined by Google President Ruth Porat, IBM CEO Arvind Krishna, Inflection CEO Matthew Kinsella. First executive order launches a national effort to produce a quantum computer capable of performing important scientific calculations and to develop quantum-enabled sensors and networks the next 5 years. And we're going to be investing in American quantum leadership. The second order of signing directs federal agency to transition to what is called quantum cryptography for their computer systems by 2031 and to lead the way for wider adoption of these extremely strong security standards.
All right, strong security standards. Now let's play this real quick. All right, and then we'll get into some scriptures and a few videos, and hopefully you brothers and sisters are edified, because we're at the end of this man's world. Okay, understand that all of these things that we are witnessing are what John the Revelator warned about if you are able to tap into the spirit. Okay, and you still have particular Israelite leaders in camps that are reluctant to condemn this technology, all right, or reluctant to link it to what John the Revelator saw. All right, but as we get closer and closer to the end, there's going to be a reckoning for those false prophets. Okay? Either they sold out or either the Lord has just blinded them. Because how can you see this and read what John the Revelator warned about in Revelation, the 13th chapter, all right, and not warn? Remember, the scriptures tells us, let's get the book of Revelation, the first chapter. Okay, the churches are supposed to continuously hear this message, because the new song is centered around victory over the beast, his image, and his mark. Warning about the beast, his image, and his mark is within the new song lyrics. If you will have it, this is the book of Revelation, chapter 1 and 3. I'll get it in the NLT. It says, God blesses the one who reads the words of this prophecy, because the prophecies written in this book. All right, let's read it in verse 1. This is a revelation from Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, which the Most High gave him to show his servants the events that must soon take place. So the things you're reading about in the book of Revelation are things that would take place from the time he got the vision to the end. Okay? He sent an angel to present this revelation to his servant John, who faithfully reported everything he saw. This is his report of the word of the Most High and the testimony of Yahweh Shai. The Most High blesses the one who reads the words of this prophecy to the church, and he blesses all who listens to its message and obey what it says, for the time is near. Okay, so these things have hastened from the time he received the vision until now. Okay, it seems like a lot of time, but really it was a short time. And now things are speeding up, as the Lord said, unless those days be shortened. Let's get that. The book of Mark 13, I believe. Mark 13 and 20. Okay, as a matter of fact, let's jump to verse 19. Speaking of the days we're in now, for in those days there should be affliction, such as was not from the beginning of creation, right? Tapping into Daniel, the 12th chapter, all right? It's going to get so bad that eventually the angels are going to have to intervene, right? Giving some of us spiritual capabilities. And if you don't believe on that level, you don't believe in the resurrection. Okay, first and foremost, you Israelites better believe that the Most High raised his son from the dead after the third day, all right, when pretty much the body starts to germinate and disintegrate. The Lord didn't allow his Holy One to see corruption and raised him from the dead. And he raised, and for 40 days and 40 nights was amongst his followers, man, starting with his disciples, in particular men and women he broke bread with before he ascended back on high. And before he ascended back on high, he told his disciples, you're going to be witnesses about me and my resurrection, all right, even unto the uttermost parts of the earth, which we are in the uttermost parts of the world. Babylon the Great, okay, the greatest kingdom to have ever lived on the planet Earth, where we are suffering our final captivity. And things are getting worse and worse and worse under Esau's rule, man, as a lesson unto us. Mark 13 and 19, for in those days shall be affliction, such as was not from the beginning of creation, which God created unto this time, right? Neither shall be. There will be greater anguish in those days than any time since God created the world. The food, the condition of the food, the mindset of the people, the condition of the air, the condition of the water, all right? Just those alone let you know that we're in a time worse than any other time, all right, on the planet Earth, man. All right, and there will never be so great again. It ain't gonna ever get this bad again after this man is taken out of power, man. In fact, unless the Lord shortens that time of calamity, which people, it's so crazy. I was reading the Wisdom of Solomon, the 14th chapter. These great plagues, people look at this as peace. Okay? The fervency for this place to go down is, you don't see that amongst a lot of Israelites, man. They think that this is okay. All right, because they, victuals are a little cheap or whatever it may be. They really believe that this world and the way that it's being ran, and it's not as bad as we're saying it is. In fact, it's worse than we can even, express. In fact, unless the Lord shortens that time of calamity, not a single person will survive. But for the sake of his chosen ones, he has shortened the days. Okay, so no flesh will be saved, because they plan on merging man with machine, and human beings as we know it won't survive. Okay, this is why the Lord is going to have to intervene, because his plan is to deliver a physical seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all right, and take down the physical seed of Esau, Edom, and the rest of the heathen. Okay, and they have their eyes set out on changing everything from the inside out, creating their own form of humanity, right? And it's getting so bad that the Lord is shortening the time. If you're looking up and you're noticing how fast days go, how fast weeks go, months go, years go, that's the Heavenly Father through his only begotten Son hastening the day, man. Because this devil is crazy, man. Let's play this. The CEO of Qualcomm says 6G will track everything that moves, and the internet is melting down.
6G will track everyone, everywhere, all day, every day. That's what the CEO of Qualcomm just admitted in a podcast.
6G is going to do, not only at your neighborhood, not only at the city, at the state, but at the entire country level, will map the digital twin, I think, of the world. And that also become very interesting. Of course, in today's, I think, environment, if I say that, everybody will understand it. Like you can do drone detection. You know, everything that is moving is going to be tracked. You have a radar at scale.
So basically, 6G won't just track digital devices. They're talking about building a model of the entire world where they can track anything that moves. This is even scarier than what he admitted earlier.
What is 6G? 6G is designed for AI. So in addition of the networks making connectivity and give you faster connections, will sense everything around you. You take the AI to the next level, you can actually get facial recognition of everybody in the room. That's going to be done at scale at a 6G network, and that's more context.
It almost makes no sense for him to admit something like this so publicly. But then again, they're all openly admitting that 6G is pretty damn scary.
So we're into 6G now. I was a leader on 5G getting that done. And now they're up to 6. Let's do it again. What does that do? Give you a little bit deeper view into somebody's skin?
Does that give you a deeper view into someone's skin? And he's saying these things jokingly. And even he himself may not understand the magnitude of what's really going on. But, all right, they need it to get, all right, in his head, his pocket, all right, as he's under blackmail, as, you know, the majority of your U.S. politicians are, which we know the president is just the CEO of the corporation called America, who was owned lock, stock, and barrel by the bankers, the modern day Chaldeans, who are presenting unto you, the people who, represent what they want. And they needed to get American policy, all right, under the rule of the technocracy. And this is what Trump has done under the guise of making America great again. He's made the technocrats greater. He's made the elites greater. He's made the small hats greater. Okay? And pretty much as they move forward, they're going to use this technology not only to track every goddamn thing, but to track who's against them and to make a war, all right, against the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that are in the earth today, praising the remnant that are praising him in sincerity and truth. Okay? He said, does this give you the ability to look deeper into someone's skin? We just read off of the White House website that the 6G movement is dealing with what? Implantable technologies. All right?
I like the cameras the old days. So they just have a nice feature. Now they cover every little. Let's see, Michael, you're in good shape. But I tell you, it's the 6 is coming, huh?
And by the way, this gets even worse because this 6G mass surveillance is also tied into all these AI companies and their shiny new products.
We're working with pretty much all of them.
I think like OpenAI, Meta.
All of them. And you have different things that people wear. Glasses is the easiest one to understand, but they're going to be more. They're going to be jewelry, pins, pendants, things that you wear, and it can connect you to an agent.
And if for some reason smart glasses aren't cutting it for you, well, you can go to your local Nokia store and get a 6G implant.
About 6G earlier, which is around 2030, I would say that by then, definitely the smartphone as we know it today will not anymore be the usual kind of the most common interface.
Wow.
Many of these things will be built directly into our bodies.
All right. And that number 6 is key. All right. In John's vision. Right. As we are to look out. Okay. We'll get earlier in Revelation, but Revelation 13 and 18, wisdom is needed here. Let one with understanding solve the meaning of the number of the beast, for is the number of a man, and his number is 666, 666, all right, which we always break down, all right, as chi, psi, stigma. Okay, and we know Chai is the first three letters in Christ or anointed. That's that X, all right, which they plan on Xing out the true anointed and replacing themselves and their technology, all right, as the saviors of the world, all right, which we know Yahweh Shai is coming to save his elect and establish a righteous system, right? They again, Psalms, the second chapter, tells you that the heathen are raging, right? Let's get that real quick. Psalms, the second chapter. So this is serious business. Psalms chapter 2 and 2, 2 and 1. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth and the rulers of take counsel together against Yahweh and against his anointed. Who's his anointed? Yahweh Shai. Okay? The power of his anointed. Now has come salvation, the kingdom of his anointed. Yahweh is going to establish Yahweh Shai and the elect as the heirs to the rulers of this world, man. Okay? Saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. Let us break their chains, they cry, and free ourselves from slavery to the Most High. So they're trying to free themselves from prophecy, which they're going to be in chains. They're going to be stopped. And a lot of people listen to the message of us saying that these elites are going to be, enslaved, which we can go into the very prophecies that say they're going to scurry into the bunkers, and then eventually New Jerusalem's are going to come down and enslave them, right? But that is going that's the how the earth is going to be put back in order, because the ones with power are utilizing and using their power to hoard all of the resources, poison everything you have access to, including your air, your water, right? They run a worldwide child sacrifice and pedo ring, right? So it's very key that they get stopped and put in chains, to bind their kings with chains. Isaiah 24 gives us the prophecy that the ones that are on high are going to be what? Chained and put in prison. Just like you would grab up Tyrone off the street because he's, robbing people's houses, going to the store, pocketing honey buns and being a nigga, right? Graping people, women, and just doing, he's very unsafe to be roaming free. Well, the elites represent Tyrone, all right, times 80 million. Okay? So they're trying to free themselves from slavery to the Most High. Okay? He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. He shall speak to them in his wrath and vex them in his sword displeasure. I have set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. You see that? And who's that? His son. Psalms chapter 2, right? And 12. Kiss the son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way. All right? NLT, submit to God's royal son. So the world is trying to basically, all right, the heathen with this plan are trying to basically, all right, excommunicate prophecy from being fulfilled, in which the Lord is going to set up his only begotten son. So they're setting up a scenario where the ones who are testifying and prophesying these things, all right, will basically be blotted out. Okay, and that whole chai-sai stigma, right? Which when you go to, we always break down chai, that's the first three letters in Christ. Then you have Zai, all right, which we always go into, this Zai letter, okay? It deals with physics, right? The ability to track humans, and, then you got quantum physics, they want to track the unknown, the soul, okay? And when you tap into, a lot of these creations by Esau Edom, we always show you that even Tesla has the Xi, a Greek, all right, letter, because remember the Greek, or the Greeks, were the beginning of this beast system. This seven-headed beast, okay, with 10 horns, started with the Greeks, okay? So when you see these three lines, okay, which they put it in particular fonts, right? But in the grand scheme of things, that's the Xi, stigma. So we're right on par with prophecy with everything we're seeing. Okay? Chi, Xi, and stigma, as we always show you, is what? A mark pricked or branded upon the body. To ancient Oriental usage, slaves or soldiers bore the name or the stamp of their master or commander, branded or pricked or cut into their bodies to indicate what master or general they belonged to. And there were some devotees who stamped themselves in this way with a token to their gods. All right. And as you can see here, a recognition of ownership. All right. So they're trying to own you. They want to own your soul. All right. And this is the very system in which John the Revelator warned about. And he talked about how they would have power to do particular miracles on the planet Earth. All right. So let's play this again. All right.
We're also honored to be joined by Google President Ruth Porat, IBM CEO Arvind Krishna, Inflection CEO Matthew Kinsella. First executive order launches a national effort to produce a quantum computer capable of performing important scientific calculations and to develop quantum-enabled sensors and networks the next 5 years. And we're going to be investing in American quantum leadership. The second order I'm signing directs federal agency to transition to what is called quantum cryptography.
Quantum, I mean, all of these things go over your head. All right. But again, let's get the book of Ephesians, the 6th chapter and the 10th verse in the Geneva Bible says, finally, my brethren, be strong in Yahweh Bashim Yahushai and the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of the Most High, beginning with the belief, all right, in the resurrection. Because if you don't believe that, you're not going to be able to get through this straight gate. All right, we need that type of power, believing in the name of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, also believing on the legacy tied to those names, and the great deliverance is tied to those names. Okay, remember we were delivered out of Egypt, where the Most High sent Yahweh Shai, his angel, okay, to work a great work. All right, that is still being talked about unto this day. Well, now the situation that we're in is going to require an even greater work. So if you don't believe in those things, right, and you don't have full assurance that they happened, okay, then you ultimately need to pray to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua for more faith, more belief. All right, but ultimately you through. Okay, you through. The forefront of our ministry is marked by the fact that our Lord and Savior resurrected, and if that didn't happen, we're of most men miserable. Our preaching is in vain. Okay, and we're going to be resurrected back to him, all right, in a gigantic ship that's going to come deliver us from this mess and madness that this devil and these heathen have started, along with 2/3 of our people, man. They got to go too. They're part of the problem. So we have to put on the full armor of the Most High, that you may be able to stand against the assaults of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. So when you see this guy, he's flesh and blood. All right. But ultimately, we know in 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter, that these people will come to do the bidding of Satan. Right. So we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. All right. What is a principality? Let's see how that works. Nah, I don't want to do that. What is a principality? What is a principality? A few distinct meanings depend on the rule. A small territory ruled by the prince. A hierarchy, which is Satan in this case. Okay, they rule by left-hand means in the grand scheme of things. All right. So it says, but against principalities, against powers, and against worldly governors. Okay, and we ain't talking about the people, you see, on signs as you driving through the street, vote for Governor Tim Wilson, this nigga smiling. He's through, right? We're talking about the worldly governors, the ones who govern the world. Okay, the unseen, which you see some of them pop out here and there, but in the grand scheme of things, you don't see the true rulers. They put representatives in front of you to keep you confused and out of the loop on the reality of what's going on, right? Against worldly governors, the princes of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness which are in high places. For in this cause take unto you the whole armor of the Most High, that ye may be able to resist in the evil day, having finished all things, stand fast. Standing therefore with your loins girded about with verity, and having the breastplate of righteousness. So these fiery darts are gonna, be blocked, because your soul is protected through faith and belief. Okay? So let's go here.
Trump has just signed an executive order to lead the quantum tech race. It's the first order that pushes for a U.S. quantum computer at a national lab by 2028, plus sensors and networks in 5 years, while expanding training and supply chains across agencies, energy, commerce, and NASA. Quantum computing is something you're not going to have access to. Quantum computing is everything. Quantum computing coupled with artificial superintelligence changes the entire world. The problem with all of this stuff is you're not going to have access to it. The government will. The government, we're in this catch-22. The government has to have control of quantum computing for their own sake, because there will be no secrets. Your bank account will be gone. The minute we have quantum computing,
there will be no secrets. This is the modern day Tower of Babel, all right, in a fashion that we can't even imagine. Okay, there will be nothing will be secret. Everyone's entire digital life, all right, is going to be exposed. Okay, and once they start to set this up, all right, we're going to start losing jobs. It's going to start the persecution. It's going to mark the time where they can put you on a list. All right, restrict you from having, goods, restrict you, even before they bring about the chip, restrict you from being able to have access to goods, buy and sell. All right, because you didn't bow to the image. Remember, John the Revelator gave a scenario, right? Revelation 13 and 15, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, right? Which we always go into the image of the beast. We even tied AI to that, the revival of Rome, and how a lot of these things, as we'll show you a video next, a lot of these things tie into, different gods, goddesses, and concepts of ancient philosophers and of the Greco-Roman world, which a lot of that goes back to Samaria, right? Which is Babel. Okay, the Chaldees. All right, and we're now living in Babylon the Great. I hope y'all are able to link that. When we're talking about Nimrod and the Tower of Babel, now you're living in that, in a great. Okay, and ironically, I was reading that Sumeria fell by, the concept of foreigners, too many foreigners invading, global warming, a lack of resources. I was just reading that. Maybe I'll do a lesson on it at another time, but he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak. Okay, we're witnessing the Greco-Roman Empire speak right before our very eyes through this system, its policies, the culture, and AI is now being tied to this. It says, and calls as many as they will not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Now, we always show you that this word kill, we know eventually some will be physically killed, right? But the root word is what? Apo, a separation, Okay? Any kind of separation of one thing from another by which the union or fellowship of the two is destroyed. So you won't have fellowship with the system. All right. You used to going to grocery stores, you used to paying bills online, you used to getting on the internet. You're going to be separated from that. If they find out that you are not worshiping the image or not bowing to their image. This is before they bring about the C-hip. So things are getting ready to get very, very interesting, man.
Any country can destroy the other because they'll just wipe out bank accounts overnight. They just wipe them out. There's no secrets. There's no national secrets. You'll be able to go into hack into our codes to launch missiles. There are no secrets. There are no doors that have any locks once you have quantum computing. That's the biggest problem. And I understand where Trump is coming from on this. Where he's coming from is he believes that the nation needs to be strong. You know, this is the same argument that was made back in the colonial era. Let me tell you a story about an argument, okay? Because it just walked into the room with a new face, but it's the same argument. It's the winter 1791.
And if you don't know the colonial area, you know, the British, you know, and America was born out of the British, right?
Two men are sitting in the same cabinet, and they can't stand each other. They can't stand what the other one wanted to build. Alexander Hamilton, he was an orphan, he was an immigrant, he was a genius. He was the first Treasury Secretary, and he looked at this fragile, broke, barely stitched together republic and saw what America could be great someday. We could be a great power. He saw way over the horizon. But he believed that to get there, the government had to do something really, really bold. It had to partner with the biggest power on earth. And that wasn't a government, that was money. He wanted a national bank. The federal government would assume the state's debts. In his report on manufacturers, the open argument that the state should encourage industry directly through tariffs and subsidies and a thumb on the scale. He said, we can build national champions. We'll fuse the strength of the government to the muscle of commerce, and you get a giant. And he's right, you would. But that philosophy seems really familiar, doesn't it? Now, across the table was Thomas Jefferson. And Jefferson looked at his blueprint and was like, oh my gosh, this is poison. This is slow-acting poison. His argument was not that it wouldn't work. His fear was it would work because Jefferson understood corruption the way the Romans understood, not a bribe, you know, in a briefcase, but a marriage. You just marry people off. The moment you wed the government to moneyed interest, you create a class whose fortune depends on the state. Listen to this carefully. You create a class whose fortune depends on the state and a state whose appetite depends on that class. So those two grow together. By the way, you're not in that marriage. Okay, you're not even a child in that marriage. That marriage will be between AI, high tech, quantum, and the government. You're not in that, and they grow bigger and bigger quietly until one day you look up and you find out I've been squeezed out of my own republic. Nobody even fired a shot. I'm out. This is Thomas Jefferson's argument. Okay, the argument got settled a little bit. They decided against the bank, but the actual argument it just keeps changing clothes. The bank war, that was this argument. Then the railroads put these clothes on. They were like, we're too on board. The New Deal, same argument. The 2008 bailouts, same argument. And now we put on the newest suit it has ever worn because the vice president said out loud that the president is supportive of the United States owning the big artificial intelligence company, a sovereign wealth fund. That's the idea. A stake in the people's most important technology of the age. Now, Donald Trump is doing it because America first. He believes, you know, that America can be strong exactly the way Hamilton did, okay? When I first heard this, the first word that jumped into my head was fascism. And I've been saying this is Italian fascism. I want to tell you why this is a losing argument, okay? It's not entirely wrong, but
Let's look up the word fascism. Right? A fascist is a follower of fascism or a far-right, authoritarian, ultra-nationalist political ideology and emphasizes the supremacy of a nation or race. Okay, I wonder who that race is in this system. Over the individual, advocates for a dictatorial leader, right, which will be the technocrats, enforces strict social and economic control and violently suppresses any political opposition. Okay? Two horns like a lamb. All right, they've used that to bring in fascism. And I believe the elder Ariala just recently did a video. Let's look it up on fascism. All right, let's do it like this. I know I saw it. There you go. Boom.
It's going to be in those portfolios.
So check out this particular video, right? Path to the MOTB, fascism, right? How all of these corporations, all of this mess you see in OpenAI, is all getting ready to be used to lord over you in a way, right, that most people that they don't believe, all right, as he brought up the definition of fascism here.
Even a man and his heritage, okay? And so people thinking that they're, saving up for their retirement, that they're putting money away, they don't even understand that they're actually investing in the digital slave system that they're going to be, forced into, like it talks about in the book of Revelation, the 13th chapter, And he causeth all. When we read that in Revelation, and he causeth all, this is a part of that causation, getting people to invest in this future that they don't even see. Now, I went to ChatGPT and I told it to define fascism and explain how that NASDAQ fast track system is fascist. And it says definition of fascism. One common definition of fascism is not simply authoritarian government, but a system in which political power and corporate power become fused. And we see that with the Palantir, and all these different tech companies that are working with these governments, right? It says large private corporations remain privately owned, but operate in close partnership with the state. Especially when they get ready to do a lot of this, tracking, when they do the social grading and everything like that.
Yep.
Checking your carbon footprint and all that crap.
So check out this video. All right, brothers. It's living waters. I know it's a lot, but this is what the prophets were sent here, that no one has excuse, because as the scriptures say, let's get that, I believe that's Psalms 24 or Proverbs 24. Proverbs 24. Proverbs 24 and 12, NLT. Don't excuse yourself by saying, look, we didn't know. For God understands all hearts and sees you. Okay, and hearkening to his prophets put you in good graces with him. He who guards your souls know you knew. He will repay all people as their actions deserve. So you got a lot of people that's going to try to play stupid. Well, I didn't know. Well, the prophets were here warning you. What are you using? The scriptures say redeeming the times because the days are evil. We don't got a lot of time. So a big bulk of your time as a sacrifice has to be towards upgrading your faith and understanding of what the hell is going on, man. Okay? This is off of technocracy.news. How Trump's new quantum EO locks technocracy into place. Okay? Trump signed executive orders ushering in the next frontier of quantum innovation and securing the nation against advanced, cryptographic attacks on the same day. Okay? Let's listen to a little bit of this.
Technocracy News and Trends is the authoritative source of information about technocracy on the internet. I'm Patrick Wood, editor-in-chief. Here's the title of the story: How Trump's New Quantum EO Locks Technocracy into Place, by Patrick Wood, published on June 25, 2026. Trump signed executive orders, ushering in the next frontier of quantum innovation and securing the nation against advanced cryptographic attacks on the same day. A whole-of-government approach to quantum computing. The two goals: to optimize economic activity and to secure all internet traffic, transactions, and data with new cryptographic algorithms. Quantum computing sets the final lock for technocracy. Who cares about quantum computers anyway? Are they just smoke and mirrors? Are they useful for anything? Are they an occultic tool to peer into all?
And what is a technocracy? A system or government where decisions are made by technical experts, such as scientists, engineers, economics, rather than elected politicians. Okay, so going back to one of our favorite scriptures, John the Revelator told your ass, right? Revelation 13:11, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth. This is the revival of Rome. This is that little horn spoken of by Daniel. Okay? Which, John the Revelator could very well be Daniel. Remember, it was told to Daniel, you would prophesy again. It was told to John the same thing, but that's, and their visions link hand in hand with each other. You have to go to one to understand the other. One expounds on the other. So here in Revelation, the 13th chapter and 11th verse, you're getting an insight into what that little horn would be doing, which is the revival of Rome and how they will rule on earth. Okay, we read in Daniel 7 that he would speak great words against the Most High. He will wear out the saints. He will be proud. So now we're looking at Revelation 13. This is how he would oppose the Most High, through this system. Revelation 13:11, I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, his democratic and republican system, which mimics the ancient plebeians and patricians, and he spake as a dragon. See, he's speaking as a dragon now. Okay? Through ushering in a technocracy. We don't lead elected politicians or, elections or, politics anymore. Science, AI can now rule the world. Okay? This is how jabs and CHIPs are going to be implemented in the very near future.
Alternative universes? You may never see a quantum computer, but in the hands of arch technocrats, this technology is critical to their success for universal control. With Trump's sudden rush for quantum dominance, it's time to find out why. For 90 years, technocracy has carried a defect at its core that its own architects could never engineer away. The system they wanted, a society run as an engineering problem, every resource metered, every flow optimized, every decision computed rather than argued.
And remember, Elon Musk's grandfather on his mother's side, was a part of this. Okay, Elon Musk's maternal, meaning on his mother's side, grandfather was Joshua Norman Hadelman, a flamboyant Canadian chiropractor. During the 1930s and 40s, he served as a leader of the Canadian branch of Technocracy Incorporated. Okay, and back then they didn't have the the power they had, or the science, or the miracles that they had to go ahead and forward the very plan that we see being forwarded. All right, in these times. But he was a part of it. Okay, let's look him up. Very interesting. Okay.
Required a machine that could calculate the whole of an economy in real time. That machine did not exist. The planners knew it. Their critics knew it. The dream sat on the shelf for 3 generations, waiting for hardware that could carry its weight. On June 22, 2026, the President of the United States signed the order that technocracy's planners believe finally delivers it. The order is titled, Ushering in the Next Frontier of Quantum Innovation. Read by itself, it looks like a competitiveness paper, workforce pipelines, supply chains,
China.
Advanced market commitments, a race against China. That reading is the cover, and it is
the race against China.
Meant to be. Read against the 4 other federal actions it quietly completes. The order is something else entirely. It is the keystone, or the last stone, set into an arch that has been rising in plain sight for a year and a half, and an arch does not stand until its keystone drops. Once it does, the structure carries its own load. Remove it, and the whole span falls into the river. This is the piece almost everyone will miss, because they are looking at quantum computing as just a technology. It is not in the hands of these men, just a technology. It is a foundation. Without it, the other 4 pieces are ambition. With it, they are infrastructure. The machine that could not be built. We must look back to where technocracy started in the 1920s and 1930s. Howard Scott and the Technical Alliance did not want better politics. They wanted no politics. They wanted the price system retired and replaced with energy accounting, a continental economy administered by engineers who would measure every joule produced and consumed and allocate the rest by technical formula rather than by markets or votes. The blueprint was total. It was also impossible, and for a precise reason. Nobody could do the math. It is the oldest unanswered objection to every system of total economic planning, and the planners have never had a reply. You cannot direct an economy from the center because you cannot compute it from the center. The information is too vast, too dispersed, and changing too fast for any authority to gather, model, and optimize before the answer is already stale. Markets solve the problem by distributing the computation across millions of actors and prices. Technocracy proposed to centralize the computation instead. Kaczynski's technotronic era, the most complete surveillance apparatus in human history, could gather the inputs but could not act on them at the speed and scale the model demanded. Technocracy had eyes everywhere but a brain that could not keep up. That is the...
See that? And that's the purpose of Revelation 13, where now he's been given means to do miracles through this technology to complete a lot of the plans that they've had for years.
Defect. Hold it in mind, because the 5 documents signed between November 2025 and June 2026 are, every one of them, an attempt to repair it. Genesis mission. The brain goes online.
Here we go.
The first stone was set on November 24, 2025, when the president signed an executive order launching the Genesis mission. The fact sheet sold it as a drive to cure disease and invent materials. The order itself...
The Genesis mission. All right. Now we know in the book of Genesis, all right, we find out, everything that was created, heaven and earth, herbs, animals, man, all of that. They're trying to reinvent Genesis.
Is more candid about what is being constructed. Genesis directs the Department of Energy to build a single American science and security platform that aggregates the federal government's scientific data, described in the order, without exaggeration, as the world's largest such collection, assembled over decades of taxpayer investment into one secure environment. On top of that data, it runs foundation models and autonomous AI agents whose explicit purpose is to explore design spaces, evaluate outcomes, optimize, and close the loop through what the order calls AI-directed experimentation and manufacturing. Data flows in. Models and agents optimize. Robotic laboratories execute. Results feed back. The order even reaches for the right historical analogy on its own, invoking the Manhattan Project, the template for centralized national mobilization under technocracy. In every structural particular, the brain technocracy that has lacked for 90 years. The planners will tell you it is pointed at cancer and fusion energy, and at present it is. But the machine does not care what you point it at. An engine built to optimize a national research portfolio is an engine built to optimize, and optimization of resource flows is the entire technocratic project. They have built the brain while telling you it is just a laboratory assistant. A brain needs power, and it needs to be protected. The next 2 stones supply both.
Here we go.
Pax Silica, the wall around the engine. On December 11th, 2025, the State Department convened the inaugural summit of an initiative called Pax Silica, and the signatories put their names to its founding declaration. Under Secretary for Economic Affairs, Jacob Hellberg framed it without subtlety. If the 20th century ran on oil and steel, the 21st runs on compute and the minerals that feed it, and the United States intends to organize the nations that control that stack into a single block. The stated aim is a durable economic order spanning critical minerals, energy, advanced manufacturing, semiconductors, AI infrastructure, and logistics. The entire physical supply chain beneath the machine, fenced off from China and administered among trusted partners. The name is a confession. Pax Romana, Pax Britannica, Pax Americana, Pax Silica. The analysts tracking it have placed it in exactly...
Okay. Pax Romana, which goes back to Rome, a time of peace in Rome. Pax Britannica, going back to the British, now you have Pax Americana as the beast, is that they're trying to solidify that beast system. All right, via what? Pax Silica, which silicone, all right, is the basis of this technological world where, silicon, because how do you get silicon? It's the minerals in the earth, which is why they need, to conquer all of these different regions. All right, but you got Pax Romana, Rome, Pax Britannica, and Pax Americana. So let's get the book of Revelation 17. This is key. All right, Revelation 17. Okay. And the beast that was and is not. Okay, the Roman Empire, it was in power, then it wasn't in power, but then it revived through the Renaissance. Okay, and we know the seven heads are what? All right, the Greeks, the Romans, Germania Major, Germania Minor. Okay, the Spanish, the French, and then the British. The British is the seventh. All right, but out of the seven came America. So the beast that was and that is not, even he is the eighth. All right, this just completes the revival of Rome. America is the eighth and is of the seven because it came out of the British and goeth into perdition. This is where we are in prophecy, man, where these devils are getting ready to go into perdition. Okay, and they're trying to solidify it. All right, by, establishing this technocracy, man.
Doing my homework, we want strong arguments. Here's the thing about Italian fascism, okay? Italian fascism is not German fascism. Mussolini's economy didn't seize the factories like communism does. The owners kept their names on the door. What the state took was not the title, it was the steering wheel, okay? The company stayed private and ran at the pleasure of the regime, in service of the regime. Everything within the state, nothing outside the state. That's Mussolini. So, yes, the government that owns a piece and steers, it rhymes. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. It rhymes with fascism. But here's why I want to correct myself. I want to correct myself because it's important that I do, and you can hold me to that. But it's important because people always think of race hatred. You associate race hatred with fascism. That wasn't the engine of fascism. Mussolini didn't pass his race laws until 1938, and that was under German pressure, not from his own doctrine, okay? Anti-Semitism was essential to Nazism, not essential to fascism. So fascism without the race hatred, doesn't reveal some secret core. It just describes early Italian fascism pretty accurately. Hatred is not required in it, but nobody's going to listen to that, okay? The part that really takes the word away from me, the government holding stake in a private industry, doesn't make a country anything. What Donald Trump is saying is Norway. Norway has the Sovereign Wealth Fund. It owns roughly 1.5% of every company on the face of the earth. It took stakes in the banks and the car makers in
All right, and you could watch the rest of this. I want to move forward, right, to this video. Got this from the priest Ayasha Math. AI surveillance is creating two classes of humans. We're going to watch some of this. Tapping into this control grid. All right, that they're setting up. All right.
Our opportunities to learn from our mistakes and our growth occurs in public, via social media and online, with our friends and increasingly AI chatbots. Even so, most of us still consider that the way we live our lives day to day happens privately. Only I know everything I'm up to. Only I myself have the full picture of my struggles, worries, fears, hopes, loves, hates, failures, dreams, and regrets. This was true in Socrates' time, but it's not really true for us anymore. As we go about our lives in the modern world, Our online activity, behavior patterns, and our network of friends and acquaintances tell a revealing story about ourselves. It's not really something you can opt out of. To participate in modern life, you more or less have to exist within a system that harvests all kinds of data about you. Almost everything you do in the world now is turned into data, including the places you visit, the media you consume, and the things you buy. Even the suggestion of an interest, something mentioned in passing to friends, the pattern your mouse makes as it hovers over different parts of the screen, are useful in creating a detailed picture of who you are. This data gets sold, traded, and stored across countless...
As you use these phones, these computers, they're tracking everything about you. Your data is being sold. It is the new gold. All right. Why is data the new gold? Let's look that up. Why is data the new gold or oil? Data is called the new gold because, like raw gold, it holds little value until it's mined and refined. When properly analyzed, vast amounts of information become a highly profitable resource that drives businesses, decisions, all right, powers artificial intelligence, and predicts consumer behavior. Okay? So everything, there's a digital you being sold all over the world. How to market things to you. You wonder why when you thinking things and when you saying things is now popping up as being advertised. Okay, this is the new gold. Okay, raw material versus refined insight. Just as gold must be extracted and melted, raw data is essentially useless noise until it's refined by algorithms, data systems, all right, and actionable intelligence. And then this is going to give them the ability to accuse you as well. All right. It's a lot, but, you know, you got to tap in.
Platforms by thousands of companies, most of whom you've never heard of. In the past, spying was an expensive undertaking that required a lot of resources and coordination. The kings and emperors of history were always keen to track and foil plots to overthrow them, but the number of spies they could recruit from their population was limited. If all your people are busy spying, then they're not doing all the other things to keep your kingdom functioning. Now with the rise of artificial intelligence, the situation is very different. The same qualities that make AI incredibly good at analyzing an entire book and identifying the themes, character relationships, and subplots also make it exceedingly good at finding patterns and doing predictive modeling about human behavior. Over the past couple decades, free-to-use platforms have come to treat their users' data as a product to be sold. And as the harvesting of personal data has become the norm, AI has gotten smart enough to put the pieces together from many disconnected data sources to make a mosaic that reveals who we are in a deep way. So much so that the companies collecting our data are far better at predicting our views than even our partners or closest friends. As AI becomes cheaper, more widespread, and more powerful, it's becoming less and less expensive to aggregate huge volumes of harvested personal data and use AI systems to, effectively, spy on everyone, all the time. From the present, where most of the world is already monitored by an ever-expanding range of technologies like satellites, cameras, and microphones, it's not hard to imagine that the capability to do this at a scale of the entire human population could be where this trend is headed. There is another story from ancient Greece that helps to explain our current moment. The word panopticon comes from the Greek myth of Panoptes, the...
See that? The image of the beast is speaking. All right, their idols, their all of that is now being played out through the miracles that they're able. So, panopticon. All right, rewind it just a little bit.
In our current moment, the word panopticon comes from the Greek myth of Panoptes, the all-seeing giant watchman with 100 eyes. He only ever closed 2 of them at a time to sleep, making him an excellent guard for the goddess Hera. 2,000 years later, in the 18th century, English philosopher and social reformer Jeremy Bentham took inspiration from the myth of Panoptes in his design for a prison that would be more effective at controlling inmates' behavior. The panopticon is a circular prison with a watchtower at its center. Prisoners could always be seen by the guards, but a screen on the watchtower meant the prisoners themselves could never know for certain if the guards were observing them. The idea was that they would behave better because they had to assume that they were always under observation.
Did not Larry Ellison say? All right, with digital IDs, all right, our people will behave better. All right, which when Trump was elected, that's who was he put him in front of your ass.
The core idea of the panopticon is based on one group of people having a great deal more awareness and knowledge than another. In this case, the guards can see everything the prisoners are up to, while the prisoners only know that there's a chance that they're being watched at any given moment. Because the prisoners don't know which parts of their experience are being observed, the expectation was that they would self-regulate their behavior, leading them to be reformed through what is effectively psychological control. It isn't hard to see the parallel to a world in which never-sleeping, sentinel-like AI systems continuously pore over data that is constantly being harvested about all of us. The potential for surveillance is just the same as it was in the original design, except in this case, we're building a virtual panopticon. And like the 18th century prison concept, the virtual panopticon of today would function as a system of psychological control. If you knew that someone somewhere had the superhuman ability to connect all the dots of your behavior and make a detailed model of your life, interests, passions, secrets, and more, you might behave a little differently. You might be more cautious about what you say or how you say it, or even what you do or who you choose to do it with. You might think twice before posting that opinion online, or attending a protest, signing a petition, or voting for a certain candidate. The more that is known about what someone chooses to look at, what they choose to buy, or what media they consume, the easier it is to predict their political views, or the way they spend their free time, and ultimately, the path in life ahead of them. This idea that people will behave differently if their thoughts and actions can be known through the use of technology comes up again and again in fiction. For example, Big Brother from George Orwell's novel 1984, and Pre-Crime from the movie Minority Report. Many people are not yet aware of how close we are to making these cautionary tales a reality. Now imagine for a moment that you happen to be one of the few people in control of the virtual panopticon in the near future. You have the power to unite all the data and know everything about everyone. Think of the power this would give you. You could keep track of all your competitors, learn of their plans before they're ready to be enacted, and stay one step ahead. Whether you happen to be a dictator, a billionaire CEO, or a drug cartel boss, you would be able to see challenges to your status and influence before they materialized.
Wow. That's why the great whore that sitteth on many waters. Let's see where that's at. Right, Revelation 17:1, and there came one of the seven angels, which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, and I will show you the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. All right, and it tells you that these waters, Revelation 17:15, and he said unto me, The waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth are peoples, multitude, nations, and tongues. Let's get Ezekiel 28. Son of man, say to the prince of Tyrus, which the prince of Tyrus is a model of the king of Babylon, America, right? He waxed proud through his ability to trade and control, right? There was and this is a Canaanite. Remember, this is the new spiritual Sodom in Egypt. So the prince of Tyrus was a Canaanite. Sodom was controlled by Canaanites. This is the new Sodom in Egypt. Son of man, say to the prince of Tyrus, Thus saith the Lord God, because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am a God, I sit in the seat of God in the midst of the seas, yet thou art a man and not a God, though thou set thine heart as the heart of God. Behold, thou art wiser than Daniel, and there is no secret they can hide from you. Daniel was good at predicting dreams. Now he wants to predict behavior and be able to, punish you, all right, accuse you, all right, and basically pass laws and legislations on to get you up out of the earth based upon what you will do, based upon what? This digital, tracking your digital footprint, your data and everything else that they've hoarded about you with thy wisdom and with thine understanding, right? So there's nothing you can hide from this devil. With thy wisdom and with thine understanding, thou hast gotten thee riches and has gotten gold and silver, all right, into thy treasures. By thy great wisdom and by thy traffic, thou hast increased riches, and thine heart is lifted up because of thy riches. Therefore, thus said the Lord God, because thou hast set thine heart as the heart of God. See? And see, with this technology now, he's of the opinion that he got it. Okay, and they're accelerating it at a level that people don't really quite understand what's going on and what they're talking about.
It's not the kind of power that can be taken back easily, or perhaps at all. Of course, there are some good reasons for all the data collection behind this predicament. Government agencies and police departments have an important job to do in keeping people safe and secure.
Peace and safety is the theme of this whole NWO. By peace, he's going to destroy many.
And understandably, they want tools to make their job easier and more effective. They work alongside private companies that build powerful systems to gather and sort data, using AI to find patterns, predict threats, simplify decision-making, and execute those decisions. Unfortunately, these tools end up collecting data on everyone and creating a virtual panopticon by default. These systems treat everyone as pre-suspicious, collecting data first and asking questions later. And the private companies that build these technologies are motivated to develop the most revealing tools possible. What sort of world would we be living in if all-seeing AI versions of Panoptes controlled by a handful of powerful people?
See, these ancient myths and folklores and gods and goddesses are now, all right, playing out and speaking, governing your life. The mother of all harlots
Could know our true intentions, our desires, and our fears, and manipulate them. As of summer of 2026, the phrase permanent underclass has been memeing its way around the world. Most people think that permanent underclass refers to the idea that rapid AI automation will create a permanently unemployable lower class. But inside Silicon Valley, the term permanent underclass has a much deeper, more dystopian meaning, one that goes far beyond employable versus unemployable. These AI companies are creating two distinct types of people, the few that control AI and the billions who will forever be controlled by it. One group will live in a virtual prison, while the other group experiences unlimited freedom and power. Right now, there is a manic urgency to be on the side with control, which is why AI companies have disregarded safety, responsibility, and reason, spending trillions in service of a mission to construct a future that nobody wants.
right? And Trump is being forced to pass legislation where there will not be any, all right, governance. No one will be able to restrict how far this AI and this stuff goes.
We don't live in a world like that yet. For now, it would appear as if there's time to decide what kind of society we want to be. But given the trend, avoiding that future means changes to laws around privacy and data harvesting, as well as thoughtful decisions about what kinds of surveillance tools should be built and how they should be allowed to be used.
All right. So we're entering into the child side stigma. Okay. Let's see here. We'll get to that. Now, let's jump here and then we'll get one more and we'll close it out.
But we told you about the extinction level event that is coming, and now we have our clearest sign yet that it's being accelerated. But some brave individuals are trying to stop it. A new groundbreaking lawsuit, arguably one of the most important lawsuits in history, has just been filed against one of the most powerful and secretive technology companies in America, Palantir Technologies, along with its billionaire founder, Peter Thiel, CEO Alex Karp, and the COO, Shyam Sankar. Now, the plaintiffs are listed anonymously.
So you got people fighting back against this stuff as they're starting to realize what's happening.
In this complaint as John Doe and Jane Doe, but it's way bigger than just these names. They allege that Palantir has crossed a constitutional Rubicon, if you will, using its
See, the Constitution is getting ready to be done away with.
artificial intelligence systems to surveil, profile, and manipulate the American public without our consent. According to this 43-page verified complaint that I've read in federal court, Palantir software, the same tools that are used by the Pentagon, the Department of Homeland Security, and intelligence agencies, are allegedly being deployed domestically to monitor U.S. citizens, harvest our biometric data, censor online speech, and even interfere with elections. And it goes.
This is another one I wanted to real quick. Let me see if I can find it. Boom. 20 states signed treaty granting small hat backdoor access to all smartphones in America. And I believe the Elder Ashiar had a video that he did on it. See if I can find that. There we go. This one.
Do it.
Sort of intuit, you would sense that Jesus is not in favor of, say, like genocide.
Correct. I would hope. But there's always a counter argument, like in these FARA documents. The foreign agent is Israel Minister of Foreign Affairs. And
so I keep stepping up. So what are those documents? So you're basically saying, in order to understand this,
So watch this video. Act of war, Amalek spying on millions of Christians, Americans, and churches.
Look not just at the theology.
Because they're getting ready to outlaw, all right, you using the Bible as a means to speak against what they're doing.
But at the money.
Correct, at the money, because, yes, I think most people would say genocide in Gaza is wrong, right? But then they will always find a counter, which is, well, there's bad things. There's
Hashem Rekak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who taught me this truth, and shalom to the hopeful elect. I'm back with another quick lesson through the Holy Spirit.
Closely at the demographic reality of modern Israel is to see a deep contradiction between ancient texts and contemporary politics. Do you guys realize that the people in Israel today are not the Israelis in the Bible? They weren't always there. Yes, they were. No, they weren't. All the Israeli people you see today are all from Eastern Europe. All of them. There's a reason why DNA testing is highly regulated in Israel.
Interesting times. I'll just leave that there. Check out this video, but yeah. Okay, it's getting deeper and deeper. Okay? And a lot of people are now starting to figure out, wait a minute. So it's going to be a lot of rebellions, a lot of uproars coming.
Goes much deeper than all of that. The plaintiffs are accusing Palantir of developing what they call synthetic intelligence, technology that merges machine reasoning with human behavior prediction, pre-crime, Minority Report style stuff, effectively trespassing into the human mind. They claim it violates basic rights and privacy, free speech, cognitive liberty. Cognitive liberty. It's a new phrase, a term gaining traction among
cognitive liberty. Okay? Think about that. Let's see. Cognitive liberty. What is cognitive liberty? All right. It's often called the right to mental self-determination. Is the fundamental right to control one's own brain, mental process, and consciousness. It functions as a modernized, functional expansion of traditional freedom of thought. All right. You ain't gonna have no freedom of thought. That's where this is all going, man.
Digital privacy advocates, and I'm glad we're going to have this discussion. James Martinez is an MK Ultra whistleblower. He received information about this lawsuit a long time ago, and we had him on to discuss this extinction level event that is coming. And I was just speaking to James a few minutes ago, who said this is an accelerant. This is speeding up this extinction level event. And James joins us once again.
A collection company, it basically surveils and checks and takes all your data and synthesizes it to create a picture about a person, a place, or a thing. Now, since this is now very public, in terms of what the company intends to do, it's been slowly preparing the public, and that was quite apparent when the presence was known at a very well-watched event that happened recently during the Charlie Kirk funeral, where Palantir was on the wall right next to the stage, as if they were sponsoring the event, which I found, I saw that as, yeah, it's a funeral. It's a funeral for everybody. Based upon the media ecological effects of what technology does when you insert it and begin to use it. And when I'm talking about media ecological effects, that's a word that came from, was kind of coined by Marshall McLuhan, which basically says what happens when you introduce technology and how it affects the sensory balance in the brain between the senses and how you create your reality. Like, for instance, the media ecological effect of a fork would be to accelerate the amount of food you could get into your mouth. That would be an effect. With this technology, its effects will basically, they'll have access to all your data and then begin the model of who you are. You won't have authority over it unless you've done some very serious things in the courtroom. And it's going to eventually create complete paranoia because you'll have absolute zero privacy. We haven't had privacy for a while because of Google, but this, at this time, is an accelerant on top of all of it that is going to violate most of, if not all, our cognitive liberties.
You won't have cognitive liberty. Imagine that. Okay, you think your woman is a tyrant over your cognitive, because women don't really want to know what a man is really thinking, and when they do, they lose their mind. All right, but they want to track you, trace you. Imagine that. All right, on a whole nother level, man. This is the book Psalms 37:14. The wicked have drawn out the sword and have bent their bow to cast down a poor and needy and to slay such as be of upright conversation. But a sword shall enter into their own heart. There's going to be cast into a net by his own doings, man. This nigga is crazy. Isaiah 59. Get a few more and one more clip and we'll close it out. Isaiah 59 and 14. Our courts oppose, this is NLT, our courts oppose the righteous and justice is nowhere to be found. Truth stumbles in the streets and honesty has been outlawed. Yes, truth is gone and anyone who renounces evil is attacked. The Lord looked and was displeased to find that there was no justice. Okay? Ushering in the next frontier of quantum innovation in the race against China. Okay? And I had a few things, you know what I'm saying? But, oh yeah, they coming with it, man. But we'll get to that in another one.
Because now we're into predictive models of behavior, of human behavior. And what is that going to mean in court? What's it going to mean when you create the data off of somebody that's profiling that is a criminal? And the data, which is digital, can be broken into and changed. You have all these ethical problems and legal potential problems that are going to exist as an effect of this technology.
You're going to outlaw righteousness.
Now they're requiring biometrics to go anywhere. So the digital prison is coming out, yeah. and this is part of it, because this is going to be used as a behavioral tool to control populations, because they don't really want you here anyway, because the World Economic Forum, as many of your people in your audience know, this is just a tool to take down humans and put them into the fusion basis with machinery, and essentially that kills you. You're no longer human. So that's the issue with this.
Well, and people, I think, are becoming far more aware of this now, and they're seeing the chaos, they're seeing the discontent, they're seeing people fighting each other online, they're seeing people fighting each other on the streets in Portland or wherever it happens to be, sowing this discontent. And we've been trying to point out here on the show, we had Colonel Towner Watkins on the other day, and she's making the point that people are missing the 30,000-foot story here, is that this is all in an effort to sow discontent. And of course, to bring us, as you point out, under this biometric surveillance state that controls everything we do. So while we're down here fighting over little things, they're up here with a sort of master plan to move us into this. And I think this is what some of the lawsuit says. And there's some big allegations in here. I want to go.
Is an invitation for the entire human civilization to have a very serious talk about its future and the cutting off of our human spiritual component that makes us human. And we're not turning into machines until we have the big talk with everybody, because that's what really all of this is about. This lawsuit brings up all sorts of legal issues having to do with just privacy, not to mention theft of data. And they're presuming, with all the data that they're stealing, are going to be stealing and spying on everybody, that data is theirs, when they're going to argue that we voluntarily complied to go for all this. This is the problem with these big technology companies that are just way out of hand, and who these guys are working for, because it's already become highly politicized because of what's happened in Israel, where they were using Palantir technology there with the genocide and everything. So what does this mean? We've got people testifying about extraterrestrials in Congress. You've got genocide going across another side of the world. You've got complete riots all over the United States right now. You've got, a whole ton of major activities are going on, whilst the real end of the show has to do with free speech, because they're already starting to legislate that. And this is going to be part of a tool that makes that legislation enforceable. So it's over. It is over unless people get involved with this, because
ain't no lawsuit, ain't no people gonna stop it. It's all prophecy.
Rebut all of this stuff now. There's going to be a huge wave of people in the future. They're going to just start dumping all their phones. They're not going to have any mobile devices. It will be fashionable not to have them soon. It's already started anyway.
I know. I get your feeling on this. I really do. And I think you're right about this. I just got chills, to be honest with you. That's like spirit. That's like God telling me you're right. Like, this is coming. And this is perhaps, I'm feeling like overwhelmed. Like, I hate to be like kind of cheesy about it, but I just got like, I don't know. Something hit me just now when you said that. Again, I'm not trying to be cheesy or dramatic here, When you said that, I just got like an overwhelming, like spiritual hit in my body when you just said that. I almost wanted to cry. Like I just got tears in my eyes about it because I feel like we're heading there.
We're there, nigga.
People are going
Yeah,
to,
this is
like they were burning records back in the day. They were burning, but people are going to take these phones and they're going to throw them away and they're going to be done with it. And they're going to say, you know what? You can reach me on my landline going forward if you want to call me.
I've already had people call me about getting rotary phones, getting ham radios, CBs. They're just
too deep in. We'll see. It's going to be very interesting going forward. Let's just look at some of this and we'll close out.
There is so much to discuss and dissect. I'm very excited to have you on for what is going to be a scary, sobering, but very necessary conversation for our viewers. Now, we can't cover everything that you discuss in this episode, but we will start off with establishing the big picture.
This nigga to put a teddy bear on her head. Every time she do an interview, just put a mascot head on. Because goddamn, boy.
And Catherine, you have been warning for years now that a digital control matrix is being built around us as a digital prison, a world where more and more of our lives are tracked, monitored, and ultimately controlled through technology. And the walls of that prison, as you've described them, include digital identity, programmable money through a central bank digital currency or stable coins, AI, collections of enormous amounts of data, as well as digitally connected infrastructure from electric vehicles to smart devices to robotics. Now, again, none of these things sound threatening on their own, not at all. In fact, they sound like progress, convenient, efficient. They do make our lives easier and better and faster in many ways. But your concern is that while each piece is sold to us as progress, together they're building something much bigger, a system that can lead to ultimate Orwellian control. So before we break down the specific elements here, the specific walls, if you will, of the digital matrix, let's start off with the big picture for us. What exactly is the digital matrix that you see being built around us, and why should it concern us?
So the important thing to understand this is essentially this is being built by the central bankers and the people who own and operate the central banks in the Western world. And the way to understand it at the highest level is to appreciate that once the Federal Reserve went into place in 1913, we created a balance of power between the banks running monetary policy and the people's elected representatives running fiscal policy and the executive branch enforcing. So you had this balance of power between the people's representatives and the central banks. What is happening using digital technology is moving to a system where the central banks can control monetary policy and fiscal policy. So we've been told that the American Revolution was fought over taxation with or without representation. What we're talking about when you give central bankers control of fiscal policy is taxation without representation, but complete financial transaction control. So many people say, well, what is that? It's really, what happened to the Canadian truckers. Their bank accounts were turned off, their transactions were blocked, the people who supported them were blocked. So we're talking about affecting day-to-day control through a financial mechanism. So how does this happen? How do the central bankers build an infrastructure that will let them take over fiscal policy? There are three legs to the digital control grid. And what you need to do is understand them independently, but then how they work together. The first is programmable money that can be programmed and can be used centrally to make rules and enforce them centrally without a human chain of command in the middle. And we can talk about that more. The second is...
how does this not tie into what John saw? I don't understand. What is up with you guys, man? And he calls it all, Revelation 13 and 16. Small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. And we always go into mark, charagma. This is where it's going, man. All right, it's an idolatrous image. It's an idol. That's what this is all centered around, idol worship. Okay? Wisdom of Solomon 15 and 7. The potter himself decides which object shall be used for what purposes. He is a human being who was himself formed of earth only a short while earlier, and after a little while he must return the soul that was lent unto him. You devils, man. But then you're making idols to control the Lord's creation. He will go back to the same earth. He is a human being, but he wastes his labor shaping useless gods out of the same clay he uses to make pots and the minerals of the earth. Remember, we're made up of the minerals of the earth. Okay? His life will be short and he will soon have to die, but he is not concerned about that. He wants to compete with those who work in gold and silver and bronze, the silicon, packed silica, meaning the minerals of the earth, and make things like they do. And they would make idols out of gold, bronze, silver, wood. He takes great pride in the thing he makes, but they are counterfeit. Okay? Pseudo. Okay? Artificial, artificer. His heart is made of ashes, and his hope is cheaper than dirt. His life is not worth as much as his clay, because he never came to know the Most High who shaped him, who breathed into him an active soul and a living spirit. He thinks human life is just a game, a market where he can make profit. He believes he must make money however he can, even by evil ways. Okay? This man who makes idols and fragile pots from the same clay knows better than anyone he is sin. And this is the man of sin.
Is a digital ID, because it's very important if I'm going to implement control through digital mechanisms. I need to make sure you're you and Catherine's Catherine and Harry's Harry and Sam is Sam. So you need a very high quality digital identification system, which is interoperable globally. And then the third thing you need is you need the hardware and software infrastructure. So you need the data centers. You need the underground cables. You need the AI to process enormous amounts of data. And you need all the cameras and other items, including satellites, that you need for surveillance. So essentially, you're creating a system that can do surveillance. I can track where you're going and what you're doing and how you're using and spending your money and your time and your resources. And then I can use that data to create incentive systems that encourage you to do what I want and discourage you from doing what I don't want you to do, and including essentially threatening to turn off your money unless you do exactly as you're told. And so literally, if this goes into full force, you're talking about moving into a slavery system where essentially your life can be controlled by people who make the rules very centrally and enforce them centrally, bypassing all the current, both the legislature and the courts, and stripping you of any constitutional rights or property rights. So I know you have one of my favorite clips of a central banker basically telling you that this is what they have in store for you. In 2020, I was watching an IMF panel with the co-host of the show we do called Money and Markets on the Solari Report. And you have to understand, I was raised to be a central banker. So I was asked to join the Fed as a governor. I was raised to be a central banker. And one of the things you're taught in that world is you never speak plain English. You never, you talk pretzel talk, around here. And when it's all over, the audience is like scratching their head and saying, I never understood economics.
This is why the Lord gave you the prophets, okay, to dissect, all right? And they have people like her who act as third witnesses, right, to basically, have their own tongues to fall on themselves, man.
But you never bluntly tell the truth of what you're doing or what you're planning to do. And so I was watching this panel at the IMF that was online because of the pandemic in October 2020. And Augustine Carstens, who was head of at that time of general manager of the Bank of International Settlements, which is the central bank of central bank, the 63 most powerful central banks are members of the BIS, basically explains what they intend to do. And it was the first time in my life I had ever seen a central banker tell the truth. And I fell off my chair. And I said to John, oh my God, we have to clip that. And he said, I've already done it. We've got it. And here it is. So perhaps you could play it. Yeah, we'll play that.
For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also, we will have the technology to enforce that.
Well, Catherine, that sounds pretty terrifying. And they say when somebody tells you who they are, you should believe them. So there he is, laying it straight out there. So we're talking about a system where every transaction can be tracked, every movement can be monitored, every purchase can be analyzed, denied, or not allowed to go through, access to money, services, mobility, all increasingly depending on digital systems. And it all links back to, I think, the central pillar, which is the money, the CBDCs.
Right. So, or, you know, now what they're doing is they're not going to use CBDCs in the United States. What they're planning on doing is coming out with stable coins and digital tokens that are programmable in the same way. It's a public-private partnership, and it's much more terrifying than CBDCs because you have complete non-accountability. You know, if you remember the Twitter government model on censorship, you know, Twitter's saying we're a private company, we're not a government, we're not held to that standard. And the government's telling them what to do, but from behind the scenes, but the government says it's not us. They're a private company that can do whatever they want. So now we're talking about using digital tokens and stablecoins in a public-private partnership like that, which to me is much more frightening. A central bank issuing a central bank digital currency has legal obligations to the Congress. It has legal obligations to the citizens, and it can be required to disclose all sorts of information. In the public-private partnerships that are coming into fruition under the stablecoin, under the Genius Act, the Clarity Act, and some of the other arrangements, they don't begin, these private parties don't begin to have the same obligation to the citizens that a central bank would. So if you look at the model we're proceeding with in the United States, to me, it's much more frightening than a CBDC. But number two, it's important to understand CBDC is a currency. So let's step back and talk about what is programmable money, because I want to make sure everybody understands what we mean by this. So let's say you and I do a deal with cash, and that's what I call a two-lock transaction. This is from a wonderful Substack called Escape Key, where he described it as a two-lock transaction. You have cash, you want to buy something, I have. We both agree, but we both have a lock, which means we both can veto the transaction. The transaction won't go through unless we both permit our lock to work. Okay, that's a two-lock transaction. So a three-lock transaction is where you and I are transacting, but there's a third party who gets the ability to lock the transaction. So, for example, we've had know your customer rules. We've had money laundering rules. We've had sanctions. And increasingly, banks are running software that checks what this transaction is, you know, where it comes from, where it goes, and can intercede and put a lock. So the Canadian truckers, that was a lock by the financial institutions. The government requested they freeze accounts, block transactions, and some, but not all of the banks, as my understanding, did that. But I describe that as a manual third lock, because the affecting of the blocking or the freezing or the seizing or the burning required a human to receive documents, review documents, make sure they were in compliance with the law, and then affect the transaction. Okay, so when you are doing a manual third lock, Michelle, in the
all right, so she's breaking it down. You know, here's the video. Check that out. All right, but in the grand scheme of things, call hello, Yahweh Shemel Shai. You know that we have eyes to see, ears to hear, and eyes to see, and be able to tap into. Like, we're at the end, man. We were born, okay, into the earth at a very, very important time, man. So the water Yahweh Bashim Yashai for preserving a remnant, you know, to basically get through all of this madness, man. We have victory over the beast, his image and his mark. Shalom.